Hey guys, it's Friday night. Welcome back to the Man Cave. And tonight I've got a guest with us, Mr. Paul Sidoriak. Paul, why don't you take a moment, introduce yourself, tell people who you are, where you are, and what you do.
Hey, John, thanks very much. It's an honor to be having a chat with you tonight. And yeah, I'm the owner and operator of the website Grilling Montana. I've been uh, outdoor cooking for well over 3 decades at this point. But I've written a couple cookbooks on outdoor cooking. I've written for a variety of websites, everything from recipes to product reviews, and really just am immersed in the whole outdoor cooking space, outdoor cooking universe. I really take advantage of when manufacturers try to innovate and learn about what they're doing to make outdoor cooking more enjoyable and fun for all of us. I'm reaching out today from Missoula, Montana, where I live, and was going to be outside, but it's currently, I think, 113 on my deck.
Ooh.
So I just decided to bring it in to some translucent living room light and go from here.
And my phone's ringing all of a sudden. Imagine that. Well, anyway, yeah, thanks for coming on with me. I always like to kick off my Friday nights with a drink. And you can feel free to have one with me or not. But what you having tonight, Paul?
I'm pretty standard with the vodka soda water,
There you
and
go.
I've really been sprucing things up lately with a little bit of that squirt stuff you put in there to enhance your regular bottled water. So
Yeah,
rocking a vodka soda water. How about
one of
yourself?
my uh, one of my go-tos here at the Man Cave is the Jack Daniel's Single Barrel Select. I have this probably close to every other week on my live streams. I'm new to the world of bourbon and whiskey, and I'm learning as I go. And one of the things I've learned is that this guy is one that I really like. So, uh, and guys, those of you who are watching, my executive producer is tied up. Tanya's not in the background with me tonight, so I'm going to have a little bit of a difficult time keeping up with comments. But if you have comments or questions about some of the stuff we're talking about, be sure and leave it, and I'll go back and hit those after the fact. And to get started, cheers.
Cheers, John. It's been far too long, and one of these days we'll get to do it in person.
Well, guys, Paul, I've never met Paul face to face, but I've kind of been friends with Paul on social media for quite a while now. Um, when I was in my infancy in the barbecue and smoking, some of Paul's content is some of the stuff I came across early on when I was trying to learn uh, about the equipment I wanted. Paul's website that I've got the link up here for on the screen for you guys, grillingmontana.com. Uh, Paul does a lot of great product review. Um, and he does it very well. He spends a lot of time going through a product, and his feedback is as honest and as down to earth and as reliable as any I've ever come across. And Paul's kind of like me, you know. I don't do as many product reviews as I used to, but I get product reviews. I do product reviews on stuff that's been provided to me by the manufacturer and stuff that I've bought myself. And more in more recent years, it's mostly stuff that I've bought myself. I don't take as much stuff from the manufacturers as I used to for various reasons. But anytime I'm doing a product review on something that's been given to me, I tell you that. And most of you know I've been just as critical on stuff that's been given to me as stuff that I've paid for. But Paul, early on, I think if I remember, Paul, do you have a Yoder pellet grill? Did
I
you
never
have a
did.
Yoder pellet?
I never did have a Yoder. they always caught my eye. I always
Yeah.
thought that the Yoder was a really neat looking product. There was something about that orange competition cart. And believe it or not, the counterbalanced lid, there's just something about the design of that I found really appealing. And I got close to pulling the trigger on a few occasions, but
Yeah.
actually what ended up happening was um, when Traeger had moved over to Salt Lake City, I went down there. It's been well over 5 years ago, and had some conversations with them. And I saw a prototype for the Timberline at
Right.
HQ, and I kind of fell in love with the double walled stainless and
Yeah.
a
It's
few of the
awesome.
other attributes of that grill. And so I was given I had the conversation of, maybe if you sit tight, we can talk about getting your hands on one of these when we're doing some testing. And so that's probably where I had not abandoned the thought of a Yoder. It just lost its luster because I knew that I would be trying a new product with similar advantages.
Yeah, I'm just trying to remember what product I saw you review first. It was something I picked up, and I couldn't remember if it was a Yoder or something else. But that's beside the point. One of the things uh, that I wanted to talk about specifically with the Man Cave audience here tonight is cookbooks. And Paul, one of the questions people ask me all the time, Paul, is when are you going to do a cookbook? And my short answer to that is never. I'm not going to do one. I have done what I call my free cookbook. I've got a PDF file that I hand out to anybody that's interested. Doesn't have a lot of recipes in it, but my cookbook is um, what I call the Kamado Book of Knowledge, because my background is primarily with Kamado grills, and I've written what I call the book that should come with your Kamado grill, and I give it out for free as a PDF. But guys, Paul is one of the two people that I'm aware of that has written a cookbook that's targeted at the Kamado audience. Paul, is this? I went to Amazon to look. This book exclusively Kamado. Is it still available in print, or is it only available in the Kindle version?
It's only available in the Kindle version, unfortunately. I have aspirations of re-releasing it, updating
Right.
some of the images, and but at this particular time, it's only available via Kindle. There's some used books out there. In fact, I don't have a copy of it. I just bought 3 used copies
Right.
just to get my hands on one just this week.
But guys, this book's got a lot of recipes in it that Paul's done, and um, Paul, it says here on the cover there's 50, and I know I've made some of these. One of the first recipes I did, I think it's in this book, uh, was one of your Thanksgiving turkey recipes, and I actually made a video out of it and credited the book in the video and made a Kamado Joe video. It was perfect. It was a beautiful Thanksgiving turkey. But Paul's written this book, and I don't have the other one he's written. It's a it's a griddle. It There it is. Okay, he's got it right there. The Backyard Griddle Cookbook. I bought the Kindle version of this one. I didn't buy the hard copy. So for those of you that like cooking on flat tops, this thing's got a lot of great information, a lot of great recipe ideas for cooking on your flat top. I have a flat top out back, and I know none of you have ever seen me use it because I haven't made any video content on it. But it's a black. It's Paul. Mine's the 2 burner Blackstone that sells at Walmart for about $100. It's 22 inch, I think. Uh, it's not one of the big ones. I wanted one of the big ones, and then I decided after a lot of thought that I wasn't going to dedicate that much space to a flat top until I decided it's something I wanted to cook on a lot because space is a premium out here. But what since you've done two cookbooks, do you have anything else coming up? Are you working on anything new in that realm?
I have some ideas in the pipeline. Um, I've been enamored with the concept of indoor grilling, and there's some products on the market now. Today's a great example. It's 113 on my deck. We have
Right.
burgers on queue for dinner tonight, and I would love to go make them on the griddle, and probably will. But sometimes it's just too hot, or in Montana it's too cold. Maybe it's that I'm getting to be of a certain age, and it just seems like complaining about the weather every day of the year. But the indoor indoor griddle, and air fryer combo grills are something that intrigue me, and manufacturers are combining these units all into one, where it becomes a grill, a griddle, a convection oven slash air fryer, and that intrigues me, because it's an opportunity to bring in more people who don't necessarily um, cook outside as frequently as you or I might. And for me, I mean, it's strictly a matter of convenience. But that's one. And then I have this idea for a cookbook where I'm still kind of developing it, but basically determining what are the top 50 most searched recipes in the outdoor cooking space, and what can I possibly do with a brisket or a pork butt or ribs or a whole chicken that hasn't been done before. But
Right.
what I would like to do is I would like to put my spin on it and explain how you can, let's say that brisket I prefer cooked over a Kamado grill. But you don't have a Kamado grill, you have a pellet grill. So it would basically be the same recipe, and then it would be just a little bit of tweaking in the byline about how would you do this on a pellet grill? How would you do this on a kettle? How would you do this on a gas grill? There's a lot of people who just exclusively use gas grills. Maybe they want to cook a brisket sometime, or something that's a little out of the box. So I'm kind of playing around with that idea. One recipe, 5 or 6 different methods to achieve the same thing based on what cooker you have.
And that brings up something else now that you mention it that you've done that I want. That 22-inch propane griddle that I've got outside, I am probably gonna rehome that thing and buy one of these new Blackstone portable countertop 2 burner electric griddles that I saw you using. I saw some stuff you had done with that, and I would really like to have one of those. I think that would be perfect for me for the smaller amounts of stuff I'm doing and not have to mess with a propane tank with it. Um, I went out shopping for one of those and I couldn't find it at Walmart yet, but I believe you said that's coming down the pipes with Walmart. They should have inventory on that sometime soon.
It's real sporadic. I'm fortunate I get to speak with Blackstone every 60 to 90 days or so. They're so busy that there's no bat phone. I can't just call them on the regular. But what I've heard is that um, inventory has been a real challenge from their manufacturing facility, and just getting products across the ocean has been
Right,
challenging. So it's literally shipping from the manufacturing facilities direct to their retailers. In this case, I believe the E Series griddles are a Walmart exclusive product,
right.
and
They were.
yeah, and so the 17-inch and the 22-inch, um, it's really also dating myself here, but it's kind of like the Cabbage Patch Kids of yesteryear. They either show up or they don't, and the people in store don't know, and you kind of find out when it's on the shelf. I encourage people. I get a lot of emails and comments on my website, people asking about availability and so on. And Walmart's, they're the leader for a reason. You can hop on their website and type in your zip code and typically determine if there's inventory at your local store. But
Right.
I know it's trickling out. I think we'll see a lot as we head towards Q4.
Well, I'm going to buy one of those, and it's because of what I've seen you do with it. After I saw your stuff, I found a couple of odd things on YouTube, and I think that thing's perfectly suited for what I might do on it because I can use that outside on the deck if I want to, or I can bring it inside, set it on the counter or on the stovetop under the exhaust hood, and use that thing inside. And I think my wife would actually enjoy that too. My wife doesn't mind cooking on a griddle. And speaking of wife, Tanya's in with us now. My executive producer, who has been let me bring her up here with us for a second. She has her parents stopped by and she was working with them on some stuff. Tanya bought us a new bed, and the people were here installing and assembling this new bed that we bought today, and her mom came over to have a look at that, and it's been an event here, hadn't it, Tanya?
Yes, it
It's been a
has.
real day. Tanya and I last week, the reason we didn't have a live stream last week's we took a little trip out to California for a few days in the sun, and we spent 4 days out in the Hollywood and Beverly Hills area in California just goofing off. And I managed to get sick right before we
Oh,
left to go on that trip. I got a sinus infection that plagued me for that whole trip. And on the way home that Friday when we were coming home, Tanya got it, and Tanya's been suffering through that this week. So we're trying to get healthy again. Neither one of us have COVID, so we're happy about that. But we got the new beds here, and I'm really looking forward to sleeping on a new bed tonight. But Tanya, are you drinking with us, or have you had time to make a drink?
I haven't even had time to make a drink, so it's
Oh, my wife Patty
water.
usually comes in here on Friday night and fires up our Jura coffee pot, our Jura coffee maker, and makes some sort of exotic coffee drink and talks about it because Tanya doesn't do the alcohol. I'm gonna have to work on that. I probably, if I could get her to, maybe
I
someday.
I used to have a great cocktail. It was alcohol, but it was kind of low alcohol. When we were watching Mad Men towards the end of the seasons, I called it a Sterling Cooper Draper Price, and I wish I could remember everything that was in it. But it was basically leftover coffee from that morning, and then a few little sweet ingredients served over ice. So it kind of came
Well,
like an adult iced coffee. It was a lot of fun.
I'm gonna get Tanya next time I think about it. I'm gonna get Tanya a bottle of Bailey's Irish Cream, or if I can find the Buffalo Trace uh, cream, maybe I'll get some of that too. But we'll let her try some of that. Tanya, I'm gonna drop you back down for just a bit here.
Okay.
And Tanya runs the show in the background here. She keeps up with the comments that are coming through, and she'll post comments up on the screen when people say something that's interesting or have a question for us. Brian, yeah, I'll talk about that Yeti luggage. Paul, I bought a piece of Yeti's new luggage. Have you seen that stuff? Do you keep up with
I have.
Yeti? I bought
I'm
that.
on their email list, and I find their stuff fascinating.
Yeah.
But I don't own a lot of it.
Well, they've got some luggage now, and I bought the carry-on size bag to use on that trip. I needed a new carry-on size bag, and I bought that, and I'm super happy with it.
Hmm.
It was everything I needed to be and more. And I might keep Brian. Stay tuned on the Man Cave Meals page because I'll probably do a one of my really right stuff product reviews on that and do a picture, show pictures of everything that's with that. It's awesome. And next time I go somewhere where I need a larger bag, I'll probably go back and order that. I wanted to buy it from Atlanta Grill Company, but when Yeti releases new stuff like that, a lot of times they'll only sell it through Yeti.com for a while before they give it to their retailers. And so I wasn't able to buy that piece from Atlanta Grill Company, but um, yeah, I'm super happy with that. And but anyway, let me get back to the cookbook thing right quick. I talked about Paul's exclusively Kamado cookbook. There's another guy that's over here in Tennessee that's done one that I like, and Paul, you're familiar with Chris Grove, right?
Oh yeah. In
Chris
fact,
has a Chris has a blog site called nibblemethis.com, and this Kamado book came out. I think maybe did this one come out before yours or after?
yeah, we're on. It's after, and we're the same publisher.
Right.
So mine was basically a follow up to his.
Yeah.
And I hate to put words in his mouth, but we spoke about it years ago,
Hmm.
and we both had similar experiences. We really put our hearts into the books, and I'll use my word, not his. I had a pretty long hangover after writing that book. I did tested a lot of recipes. I cooked a lot on the Kamado, and I think that's probably why at that time Chris didn't do the follow up to his own book, was because it's a lot of work. I
Right.
know he has a second book out about offset smokers, which I'm
Yeah.
sure is quite good.
Right.
He's a perfectionist and has some really nice recipes.
I'm going to try to meet Chris. Chris lives over in Sevierville, Tennessee, and Tanya and I travel over there. And I think next time I go, I'm going to try to get a hold of him, see if I can have lunch with him or something. Um, I'd really like to meet him because he does live just 2.5 hours from here. He's not out in the middle of no man's land like you are up there. But let me tell you, I want to get to Montana sometime because one of my favorite beers comes out of your area. I'm a big fan of the Big Sky Brewing's Moose Drool Brown Ale. That's one of the finest beers made here in the United States. Are they in Missoula?
Yeah, they're 5-6 miles from my house. I know the founders of the
Yeah.
company, and I've had various friends work for them over the years. They've done very well, and I was in the beverage industry for uh, about 12 years, and I would travel to random places, either for work or sometimes national meetings, and you'd run into a beverage person from a state that you just don't have much connection with, and they always wanted to know about Moose Drool. Oh, you're from Montana? What about Moose Drool? And or
Yeah.
I've been there and I've hung out with the Big Sky guys, and
Mhm.
yeah, it's definitely a popular beer. They have a beautiful tasting room here
Well,
here in
that
our town.
the Big Sky stuff never makes it to the places out here on the East Coast where I typically go to look for micros. We've got a couple of really good shops around here that have a very large selection of micros, but I never. There's two breweries out west that I would like to be able to have access to. Big Sky is one of them. There's one over in Bend, Oregon, called Deschutes, and they make a couple of beers that I like that I can't get here on the East Coast either. But it is
Deschutes is
what it
another
is.
one. I mean, that's surprising that in this day and age you can't get Deschutes beer where
Well,
you
let me
live. But
rephrase that. There are a couple of Deschutes beers that I can get, but for some reason, the one that I like the most is called Obsidian Stout, and I can't buy that in North Carolina. And it may be because it's a higher alcohol content, higher gravity beer. North Carolina has a bunch of freaky laws about alcohol content and whether or not it can be sold through beer channels or whether it has to be sold through spirits channels. And some of those beers may get into that. I'm not sure, but uh, the guy who taught me how to make beer traveled to Oregon a lot, and he would bring that stuff home with him, and that's how I got a taste for it. And then I didn't realize I was developing a taste for something that I really liked that I wasn't ever going to be able to buy here. But let's get back to cookbooks for a moment.
okay.
Do you have a lot of cookbooks on your shelves?
I do. I have far more than I've consumed. Um, I've got a shelf right here, and there's probably 25 of them, just within arm's reach of where I spend the most of my writing time. Some of them are even doubled up, like the Flavor Bible is one that I didn't realize I owned, so I purchased a
That
second copy of it.
that's funny you should mention that because that one's in my stack here that we're going to talk about tonight. What attracts you to a cookbook when you see it? What draws you? What pushes you over the edge to pull out your wallet and take it home with you or order it?
So cookbooks are a lot like my own cooking style. I'm very reactive. I get into I get focused on like a specific compass heading based on seasonality, based on what's available, based on climate, maybe some recent travel that I've done. So my influences really kind of change on a regular basis with no level of consistency. So as an example, when COVID kind of started rocking and rolling, I started watching YouTube. I'd never really paid much attention to it, other than some of your videos, like the turkey video you did of mine, which went kind of viral, which maybe we can chat about later. But
Yeah, that
like
thing's got
Korean
like 750,000 views on it because of that.
yeah, and I think HuffPost picked it up and wrote
Yeah,
a little piece about it, which is great. But just things like Korean barbecue. I didn't really know much about dipping sauces and side dishes and things like we don't have a Korean barbecue place where I live. So if I want to experience that, it's either going to be through a book or through travel. And
right.
the
Okay.
last couple of years, travel has been less and less. So it's just kind of I kind of chase not necessarily the trends, but I try to blaze my own trail a little bit, and I try not to be influenced by digital media, and that's where I'll just pick up a book and purchase it, and good, bad, or indifferent. I wish I was spending more time in bookstores these days in the cookbook sections, but it makes it so simple to order them online and have them in a
Right.
couple days. It's quite convenient in that regard.
Well, my philosophy on buying cookbooks, I think I've been thinking about this a lot today since I was planning on talking about it tonight. But there are about three things that cause me to buy a cookbook. The first thing, and this is probably the least important of the three, is there is some specific thing in that cookbook that I want. It may only be one recipe, or it may be one small collection of recipes. Uh, because one of the things I'm trying to do is I expand my ability in cooking, and I've been fairly successful with this, is just getting away from recipes altogether. But sometimes you need a starting point, you need a base, you need a launching point. If I want to build a recipe, if I want to make something that I've never done before, I'll need to look at how other people are doing something to get an idea of where I want to start. And sometimes I'll buy a cookbook that's got something that looks really good in it, like a good starting point for something I might want to do and turn it into something of my own. The second reason I'll buy a cookbook is if I want to support the person who wrote the cookbook, like your books, you know, and yours have been both of those things. They've always had things in them that I liked. Plus, I'm able to support somebody I know. Somebody made a comment here a little bit ago in the comments section about Rodney Scott down in Charleston. I bought Rodney's cookbook. I've never met Rodney, but the guy's a phenomenal barbecue cook. So yeah, Paul Stevens mentioned that, and I buy the Adam Perry Lang stuff because and the Adam Perry Lang stuff's going to come into my final part of the discussion. There's some specific reasons I've bought everything he's done, but I buy, a couple of my YouTuber friends have written cookbooks like Greg Mervich. I've bought Greg's stuff from the Ballistic Barbecue channel. Greg's down in San Diego, and I've had the good fortune to met Greg, and that's another reason I'll buy a cookbook. But I think the most important reason I'll buy a cookbook is if there is something that cookbook is going to teach me about cooking rather than about recipes, because learning cooking methods uh, minimizes your need for a recipe. Once you learn how to cook, you can make your own recipes quite easily, which is going to bring me to the first book in my go-to stack here, and I'm sure you're familiar with this.
Oh
You know,
yeah.
Meatheads. The Science of Great Barbecue and Grilling. When people ask me book, what cookbook I recommend, I think everybody who's into barbecue and grilling should have a copy of this, because not only are there a lot of great recipes in here, this helps you understand why you're doing the things you do, and understanding why you are doing something is worth more than any recipe. And there's a lot of great reading. This book needs to be consumed cover to cover. And you've worked some with Meathead, right?
Yeah, I worked with him for almost 3 years, and I was kind of a liaison between the website and manufacturers. That was my role. But I also did some writing for him and created some content, a handful of recipes. What's interesting about uh, Meathead, and especially the book, The Art and Science of Barbecue and Grilling. Now that it's been out for a few years, when that book came out, it was so innovative. There was no definitive roadmap. There was no manual to outdoor cooking, and that book really helped people understand concepts like dry brining
Yep,
and two zone cooking. And
absolutely.
and I think that people who are new to um, outdoor cooking, and had a conversation recently. It seems like anyone with a grill and a camera these days, a grill and a smartphone, has become an authority. And
Right.
sometimes I think that people forget the foundation that Meathead built for a lot of us, and also just compiling it. Not that it was 100% unique, but it was never in all in one place before. And
Right.
just the idea of him being able to explain what happens during the stall,
Yep.
brisket and things like that. A
The
lot of
stall
people
was
can,
beautifully explained in that book.
yeah, a lot of people can explain that these days, but think about 10 years ago, no one knew anything about it.
Right.
And I mean, I remember talking to Dennis Linkletter of Komodo Kamado a bunch of years ago, and I hadn't read Meathead's book at the time, and he was explaining to me that section on the stall, and it just made sense. Now,
Right.
in hindsight, someday I'll have the balls to question a few of Meathead's methods, because I think that they're very solid. But there's
Yeah.
a few little things in there that
Oh yeah.
I don't necessarily disagree with, but I put my own spin on, and I've
Yeah.
found to be more effective. But that book, it was rated, I think, by Southern Living, one of the top 25 most influential cookbooks ever, and it's got some high praise from the New York Times as well.
Well,
So
like I said, if I could only have one book on my shelf related to barbecue and grilling, I think that's probably the one, and that's the first one I recommend when people ask me. And I'm with you on Meathead. There's a couple things I don't like about Meathead. Meathead doesn't like Kamado grills, and he doesn't mind telling you that. And I've had conversations with him online about it, and it's he doesn't like them, and he's got his various reasons that he doesn't like them, and I'm okay with that, because the grill is just the tool you're using to get to an end, and if you know how to use your grill, you're always going to be able to get where you want to go with it. Meathead's just not fond of the Kamado, but like I said, that book, that's a no-brainer. I think that's one everybody should have, and not just beginners, but I think seasoned barbecue cooks. There's stuff in there for you to learn as well. And I've got another book that I like to recommend that's really got nothing to do with barbecue and grilling. However, the information that's available in this book that will make you a better cook all the way around is unlimited. Uh, Cookbooks, what when people ask me, what kind of Kamado cookbook should I get? I tend to shy away a lot of times from saying, well, you don't need or saying you need a specific book for a Kamado. Your Kamado is an oven, and when you learn how to control that oven, you can cook whatever you want in it. So any cookbook's going to do the trick. And one of my other favorite people, besides Meathead, is this guy, Kenji Lopez Alt. This book right here is what I like to call, this is the modern day joy of cooking. So if any of you have ever had the joy of cooking, which is I don't have that book in my stack here, but I have one. But the joy of cooking is not only a cookbook, it's a book about cooking. And this book is also about cooking. And there are tons of techniques that you can learn from the recipes and the text in this book. Yeah, Stephen Hickey, I think he and I have talked about this book at length, and he and I have both done a lot of stuff based on the recipes that are in this book. This book's not cheap. I think I paid. Oops, there goes my earbud. I'm having trouble keeping my earbud in. This book's $50 on the bookshelf at Barnes and Noble. It's probably a little less on Amazon, but this is another book that I think if you can only have two books on your shelf, you need to have this one along with Meathead's book. Have you seen this one before, Paul?
Oh yeah, I'm familiar with it. I don't own it, but I'm a huge fan of Kenji, and I am becoming more and more of a fan every day. I like what he puts out on social media. I've really enjoyed his cooking videos. I talk about it with my friends, just how genuine he is. When he makes something on YouTube after a shift, it just seems so authentic. He's in a kitchen and the line is broken down, and he knows that he wants a smash burger or a chopped cheese sandwich. And that's another thing too, is that his stuff isn't super pretentious. And I don't know what the relationship is between him and the Serious Eats anymore, but I'm on their email list as well. And
Right.
it seems that what they send me on a regular basis is a super fun roadmap for me to expand, my arsenal of dishes and things to cook, and also ingredients that I might not normally play around with. So I'll need to put that book on my list for sure.
Right.
Excuse
We've
me,
got
and
a
I believe
comment here.
go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I believe he's got another book coming out maybe in the spring. I think he just finished it up, and via Instagram or something, he's going to be taking a bit of a sabbatical and then launching a book come like spring, fall next year.
Well, it'll be on my shelf when it comes out because I like Kenji. Brief comment here. Paul Stevens says, "Do you see a recipe in a cookbook as a checklist for cooking or as an inspiration for what you might experiment?" Paul, that's one of the things I was just talking about. Most of the time, and my wife will vouch for this, I won't follow a recipe and it's not because there's anything wrong with it. It's because I want to put my own preferences into it. Uh, most of what I take from any recipe that I come across is their methods to get to the end and the ingredients. Then I'll put whatever ingredients I want to use to make that happen. My wife, my wife fusses. There's a lot of things that my wife likes to make. My wife makes a beautiful lasagna, and she wants me to make that lasagna, but I haven't done it yet because I can't let myself follow the recipe. But I've come up with some stuff that she likes, but it's still not just right. But yeah, it's just it I can go either way, Paul. Sometimes every now and then you'll see I'll do a video occasionally. There have been some videos like Paul's when I took Paul's recipe for that turkey I did. I think it was my Kamado Joe 2015. Uh, it may have been. I think it was the 2015 Thanksgiving turkey video I did for Kamado Joe. I used Paul's recipe and technique, and I followed it as closely as I could because I wanted to stay true to Paul's vision on that turkey rather than my own. and it was very good. So I've done both. Uh, the next book that I have on my stack is one that Paul alluded to just a little while ago. This is a book that I believe everybody can benefit by having. This book is not full of recipes, but what this book, the Flavor Bible, what this book teaches you is how to make flavors that are true to lots of different styles. Like if you want to cook something that's got a southwestern United States flair to it, this book tells you what herbs and spices, what kinds of peppers you want to use. If you want to make something that's North African, this book tells you how you want to season that dish to make it to bring that North African flavor. If you want Italian, if you want Spanish, if you want I can't even begin to tell you what all comes in this book, other than this is a book I wouldn't want to do without when I'm trying to build a recipe of my own. I'll come to this book to figure out how I want to season something if I want to have a specific result in seasoning. And Paul, you have this one, right?
Yeah, I have that one, and I don't believe they're connected. I also have the Flavor Equation, which I really like, and I'm probably confusing the two, but I think the Flavor Equation is more like a flow chart, and it'll if you say I want to make eggs, it will tell you all the different herbs, spices, vegetables, and things that go well with eggs. And I stumbled on it because I was at a bakery some years ago, and I know that the owner was a culinary instructor at the Vermont Culinary Institute, and so I was hoping I could get some intel out of him. But I had an albacore tuna belly, and I was planning on sous videing it and doing like a tapas, like Christmas style thing. And so I asked, and it wasn't the owner, but someone else went in the back room and came back, and they said, okay, so this type of tuna, you're going to want to pair that with some pickled fennel and cream cheese. And I was like, what? And lo and behold, she had just gone back to the book and then looked at what I wanted to do. And, these things pair well with these things.
It's called the flavor equation.
Correct. And it's just kind of fun. I've used it in recipe development. I forget who I was doing some recipes for, but there were some items that were requested that were just slightly out of my wheelhouse. And, I'm like, well, how would I season this up? And so I used that as a reference, and it worked out. It worked out really nice.
Is this the one?
Correct.
So that's the book. Okay. I will get that one on the way. So, okay, that sounds right up my alley also, and I think that would be a great book to have in the arsenal for the same reason. The last book I want to talk about is one that I'm sure nobody has on their shelf, and it took me a while to decide that I wanted this book, but this book has recipes in it, but this book is mainly about cooking technique, and this book is the textbook for the Culinary Institute of America, and it's called The Professional Chef. And this book has some recipes in it, and there's probably, I'm guessing there may be this is the 9th edition. I've had this for quite a while. There's probably a newer version of this out, but this book is full of how-to when it comes to cooking. This book was a gift. I don't know if you can see it. It claims that one of my cats gave me this for my birthday quite some time ago. So this book was on my wish list for quite some time. But if you want to know how to break down fish, everything you need to know is in this book with pictures. It's got information about breaking down different pieces of beef, how to break down chicken, how to debone chicken. Paul, it does not teach all of the sauces. And I had one book that I just took off the stack before I brought it down here. The book is called Sauces, and I thought about bringing that down, but I decided not to. But now that you've asked for it, let me show you what it is, because this is a
I wish
newer
I could just
edition.
name. I wish I could remember the names of all the mother sauces. But that's probably the difference between somebody who goes to culinary school and someone who has been. Um,
Right.
but I think it would be a lot of fun to get better with sauces for sure.
I agree, because sauces, Paul, this is the book you need.
Okay.
The one I have is not the current. It's not this edition. Mine's older than this, but uh, my recommendation is, if you want this book, I would go look for it on eBay and buy an older edition if you can find one for practically nothing, because it's a phenomenal book. And learning to make sauces is something that I've been slow to do. I would my most recent cooking video that I published today, in fact, was steak au poivre. Steak au poivre. I don't speak French very well. If I was reading it, my wife would get a kick. We would call it steak au poivre, and it was a great opportunity to make. Yeah, mayo. Scott, mayo would be a mother sauce, according to Alex on YouTube. And yeah, but sauces can take something that's great and make it extraordinary if you learn to make the sauces. And there's a lot to learn. There's the mother sauces, I think are important, and the mother sauces are not that hard to make. I think maybe the more difficult of the mother sauces is the hollandaise or the béarnaise, which is a variation of the hollandaise. Takes a little practice to get that. And Heather, yeah, I've got some favorite bread books. There's two that I like. The Flour, Water, Salt, and Yeast by Ken Forkish is a great one, and I'm scratching my head at the name of the other book, because I don't have it in my possession right now. I loaned it to my mom, and I haven't
Is
gotten
it
it back.
Leahy's book?
No, it's not Leahy's book. It's another guy out on the West Coast. It's not tartine bread. It's Josie Baker Bread. Is what that other book is called. That's a really good book. Um, I'll show you that one. This is uh this is an excellent book to get for beginners bread making. And I actually recommend, if you want to get into bread baking, that's not sourdough, or this book is a little bit more beginner oriented, I think, than Flour, Water, Salt, and Yeast. Uh, so that's a great starting point right there. It takes you through baking some basic bread first, and it's not quite as complicated as some of the stuff in the Ken Forkish book. But I think Ken Forkish is a master. Um, and then there's this book called Tartine Bread, Tartine. Those guys have a bakery out in San Francisco that's really good. And Brian, King Arthur's Baker's Companion's awesome. I've got that here as well. That's got
See,
bread and a ton of other stuff in it.
the baking content for me, other than pizza doughs, which I still have little patience for, it falls into that similar category, John, of um, I also don't want to follow recipes. In fact,
Yeah,
I yearn to write a cookbook with zero recipes in it. I want to write about sights, smells, what's in season, what was available, and how
right.
I pulled it together. If I could never write or have an editor breathe down my throat about what was that, a teaspoon or a tablespoon? Was that
Right.
granulated garlic or roasted garlic?
Yeah.
I dislike the minutia of that aspect of recipe development, and yeah, I think it'd be fun to tell a whole story about cooking without ever mentioning the word cup or tablespoon or
Right.
ounces.
Well, I struggled with bread, and I understand where you're coming from, but one of the things that I learned, first of all, before I got good at baking bread, I had to buy some video lessons. There's this website called udemy.com. It's udemy.com, and I bought a series of sourdough bread baking classes from a woman. I can't remember her name right off the top of my head. I'll look those up, and Heather, I'll specifically send you a link to those. Um, but I didn't get good at making bread until I started taking these video classes, because in the video class I could see what was going on, and she was visually showing me what the dough looks like when you stretch it, and what it looks like when you fold it. And that is when my bread game started to go crazy, is when I learned when I got the real feel for what the dough is supposed to feel like. Uh, and Paul, with ingredients, I understand where you're coming from there, but when it comes to bread, specifically bread and specifically pizza doughs, I'm pretty much a hound on accuracy and consistency in the amount of ingredients. In fact, I catch a lot of flack from people when I post a recipe for bread or for pizza dough, because I give it to them in grams rather than cups or tablespoons, because a cup of flour doesn't weigh the same thing every time you make it. And believe it or not, when you're making pizza dough, for instance, the there's a pretty significant difference if you've got 15 to 30 grams of flour difference based on the same amount of water going into it. It changes the consistency of the dough. And for repeatability reasons, I like to weigh my ingredients. That being said, yes, I can make pizza dough without weighing anything. I can mix flour and water until it feels right, but I can't do two or three in a row that come out the exact same way when I cook it, because the texture is going to be a little different. But I'm with you. I understand where you're coming from there, and I would be interested in some of that too. It's like grandma's buttermilk biscuits. She never weighed or measured anything. She put a pile of flour in a bowl, made a well in it, put some eggs in it, and a little buttermilk, and started working it together until it felt like it was supposed to. So yeah.
I have to
Um,
concede, I mean, you're spot on with from the bread or the on the pizza side of things. I mean, when you follow the recipes and you use the gram scale, which I think is simpler and cleaner than using any sort of cup or spoon,
right.
the consistency is there. Just last weekend, I made a beer batter for some halibut, and I followed a recipe, but I was winging it. Oh, my cornstarch went a little over. I didn't care. But the
Mhm.
reality was it tasted good, but when I looked at the batter, it had a weird lattice to it that you don't see at a good fish place.
Right.
And so, that's where me being oh, I have a few extra tablespoons in this bag. I'll just dump it in. It's inconsistent, unfortunately.
But in the end, you got something that wasn't. It was good. It wasn't inedible. But if you
True.
tried, if you're not, if you get something, if you are doing it by look and feel and come across something that you think is beautiful and amazing, the likelihood of you being able to duplicate it, if it's bread or a pizza crust, is slim. You won't know. You'll have to figure it out, and it'll take a while. But um, buttermilk
So
biscuits aren't quite the same as a pizza dough. There's a lot of leeway that works okay with that.
So if we have a second, I'd like to just bring up the first real cookbook I ever got my hands on, if that's cool with you. Um, it was a high school graduation gift, and it was Barbara Kafka's Party Food, and she was affiliated with the CIA. A neighbor of ours had gone up there for a meal, or I was living in New England, and bought the book at the bookstore as a gift for me. And when I was a little kid, so that that's an old book. It was probably given to me in 1990, 91, somewhere in that range. But when I was a kid, there was no Food Network, there was no cooking channel, and I remember being barely a teenager, 11, 12 years old, and I would watch a show after school called Great Chefs, and it had like a really young Emeril Lagasse, a really young Bobby Flay at like maybe 19, 20 years old.
Yeah.
Some really interesting people. Michel Richard, the person who was kind of my idol at the time was Mark Miller from the Coyote Cafe in Santa Fe, New Mexico, who's gone and retired. But if anyone's watching and they are cookbook lovers like John and myself, check out Great Chefs. It's on Amazon Prime. It's not flashy. It's not the Food Network. It's not the cool stuff we're seeing on Netflix. But from a fundamentals standpoint, gosh, they were doing stuff. And I just remember being a young kid, and to be perfectly frank, being completely grossed out. Like the idea of somebody putting chicken livers in a blender with heavy cream and pureeing that,
Yeah.
I was like borderline thrown up in my mouth. I mean,
Yeah.
I would, I was a picky eater. I barely had a mushroom until I was 22. So a pureed chicken livers with heavy cream, it was horrifying.
Yeah.
Things like aspics and the concept that they would use gelatin came from leaves. They were leaves of gelatin.
Right.
They were little clear sheets instead of the powder. And it was just so fun, and chefs from all around the world. And I really feel like kind of that era and time, with the party food book by Kafka, companioned with what I'd watched on Great Chefs, it really gave me the fundamentals. So I have the confidence today
Right.
to read people's recipes and build and expand upon them.
Heather wanted to know how many flowers I have in my cabinet. I've got probably the my primary flowers that I use for cooking. I keep 4 flowers on hand. I keep Caputo 00 blue bag pizzeria flour for any pizzas that I'm going to cook in my wood fired oven for hot pizza, for Neapolitan style pizza. I use King Arthur organic all purpose flour. I use King Arthur organic bread flour. And I have King Arthur organic whole wheat flour. Those are the primary flours I use. I've got a couple other flours. I've got some semolina flour and some rice flour. I use those for. I don't cook much with those. I'm gonna get into pasta here at some point. I've been thinking about that a lot lately. So the semolina flour may come out when I start doing some pasta. In fact, on my last trip to Atlanta, I went to the Buford Highway Farmers Market and got some good semolina flour. So you guys are lucky. You guys that live down there close to those places just are lucky. So, but I use semolina flour and rice flour when I'm baking. That's my dusting flour. Like if I want a floured work surface where whatever dough I'm working with won't stick, it's a 50-50 mix of semolina and rice flour. I use the same thing on my pizza peel or on my surface when I'm making pizza crusts. I don't use cornmeal because I don't like the flavor of burnt cornmeal on the bottom of my pizza. But I don't have anything really out of the ordinary. I am a big fan of King Arthur flour. I get great results with King Arthur. King Arthur's all purpose flour typically has the same amount of protein in it that everybody else's bread flours have. So you need to be aware of that. And their bread flour has another full percentage of protein in it. So I don't keep any cake flours on hand. If I need cake flour for something, typically my wife's got some, and I don't know what brand of it she keeps up there. Tanya, do you keep King Arthur's cake flour, or is it something else? I've used it before, but I don't remember what you have up there.
I typically keep the Queen Guinevere cake flour, but in a pinch, I will accept Swan's down as well.
Yeah,
'Cause we
so
can find that locally. But
we keep
usually I use the King Arthur.
yeah. King Arthur is good quality flour. I've never had any issues with it. Uh, Paul, do you have a flour preference when you're baking?
I bake so infrequently. I do like King Arthur. I have purchased it many times. But no, I don't. I just I make too much of a mess, frankly. There's just
Yeah,
flour everywhere. It just
I
gets
get
all
it
over my
everywhere too.
my
I try
my
I try not to
clothes.
wear dark colors when I'm baking.
Paul, you
Yeah.
should check out Wheat Montana. Um, if I can't get a hold of King Arthur, I'm actually a big fan of the Wheat Montana brand as well. And
Some of
it's
my
stuff.
some of my pizza friends here in Montana swear by the Wheat Montana. Some of their products, they think it's better than any 00 Caputo out there, which is kind of cool. I've actually had some conversations with them about maybe putting together a pizza crust, and it's nice when I can buy products that are grown locally. Just 90 minutes
Absolutely.
down the
Yeah.
road. It's kind of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I like
Well,
their flour as well. And I tend to keep, depending on what I'm doing, I tend to keep anywhere between 7 and 8 different types of flours up here. I'm
Wow.
kind of have a flour addiction.
Tanya does more. Tanya does more with flour than I do because when Tanya's baking breads that have got a lot of flour, different flours and different grains in the same bread.
Yeah.
There's some really I don't know what you call how you seven grain one, Tanya, the one that made you decide that we couldn't use KitchenAid mixers anymore. What was that stuff called?
Yeah, that's my hearty grain bread.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's what spawned the purchase of the Ancarcerum mixer, uh, which we still use.
Scott, let's not go there.
Scott, I've looked at some flour mills. I can't remember the brand name of the one I looked at, but it was wooden and it was beautiful. It was about $500, and
Yeah.
I decided no, I I don't do it because I can buy flour. I can buy flour that's good enough.
Excuse
Until
me.
somebody convinces me that I'm going to be better off with that fresh ground flour, I'm not going to spend that kind of money on a flour mill.
Well, I do have some, red winter wheat berries up here.
I'm wondering, can I do flour? Will this Vitamix that we bought grind flour?
We should find out. I mean, I think we could do almond flour on our own.
Well, I know
So,
we could do almond flour because it doesn't have to be that fine. So I don't know, but
but
we're at our hour, and I told Paul that we went for an hour, so we're not going to run way over tonight like we do sometimes. Paul, I appreciate you coming on with me, and we'll get back together sometime. I'd like to have you back on sometime, and uh, instead of talking about cookbooks, maybe we'll talk about some grilling equipment. We'll collaborate on something and give something a rundown one night.
Yeah, I think that could be a lot of fun, and I appreciate you having me on. I've been following the whole man caves thing probably since it started, and really enjoy it. And it's a pleasure to chat with you both this evening. Thanks so much for having me,
Yeah,
and I'd
absolutely,
love
Paul.
to come back.
I appreciate it, and we're gonna wrap. I don't think I'll be back next week. We'll be here next Friday night. I don't know what we're going to talk about yet. I kind of wing these things. Sometimes I don't figure. I didn't figure out what we were going to do tonight until yesterday when I talked to Paul. I knew I wanted to talk about cookbooks, but getting Paul to come on here was kind of a bonus since he's got some experience with cookbooks and some experience with what goes into writing. And Paul, let me say, I admire you because I know exactly how much work went into that, and I couldn't do it. I could not I wouldn't I wouldn't I wouldn't do it. I'm too lazy. I'll
Well,
admit
you're
it.
already there, John. I mean, I have your PDF about what they should have told you when you purchased your Kamado, or I forget how you phrase it, but it's brilliant, man. It's solid, and it comes from someone with experience, not
Well,
somebody with a mark, somebody who's got burnt, singed knuckle hair, not
yeah,
somebody who's got a extensive marketing background, and I really appreciate that. And if
right. But
people haven't downloaded it, they should
it's
find it.
been
And
downloaded. It's been downloaded over a quarter of a million times. So there's a lot
wow,
of people that have it, and I'm glad I could make that available for nothing. I didn't have to fork out a bunch of money. I didn't have to pay a publisher to publish it, and I did not want to go to self-publishing. And the main thing is I didn't want to put together all the imagery that needed to go with a real book. So, uh, and that brings up one other guy that I've left out of my discussion tonight. I'm a big fan of Alton Brown for the same reason I like Kenji. Uh, Alton Brown's a great resource for cooking methods, and one of Alton Brown's most recent cookbooks, I bought it, and I can't remember exactly what it's called, but he did all of his own photography for that cookbook using an iPhone, and his perspective on everything is a directly above shot of the food, either on a board or a plate or whatever, and it all came out beautifully. So you can make it as hard as you want to, I guess, but I'm still not willing. So don't look for a cookbook from me. I have a cookbook that's, if you want to call it a cookbook, it's a Microsoft Word document with all of my personal recipes in it, and I'm going to leave instructions for whoever are the beneficiaries in my will to make that available online. So that'll be coming one day.
well, I don't know if you know this or not, but circling back to Meathead, Amazing Ribs was a place back when he got started. Kind of right at Y2K times. There were no cookbooks. Amazon wasn't a thing. There wasn't cookbooks out there on the type of stuff he was covering, and there was, he was looking himself for how to make great ribs
Right.
on a grill and smoker, and so he just started compiling his stuff, and then he realized he had so much of it that he put it on a website, and he just called it AmazingRibs.com
Yeah.
because that's what he wanted to write about, was how to make amazing
Yep.
ribs, because no one was doing
Well,
that.
that's
So,
another
so
thing. Everything that's in this book is also probably on that website, but the book is concise. Everything's in a logical progression in the book, and you don't have to go hunting for it. But uh, you're right. And uh, Meathead's background's not in barbecue either. Meathead was he a food critic or a wine critic?
a wine.
Wine critic for some big newspaper, right?
He wrote for the Washington Post, and he wrote for the Chicago Tribune,
Yeah.
and he literally got the Huffington Post's food section up and running,
Right.
and helped with like the categories and stuff on that, and so he's definitely, as they like to say, an OG when it
Yeah.
comes to this stuff, original,
He
for
is, and
sure.
he's also got some great people working for him as well. I don't want to slight those guys in any way. Blonder, Professor Blonder, uh, is his science guy. So yeah, there's a lot of great content there. But anyway, we're gonna wrap up. Paul, I appreciate you coming on with me, and I look forward to having you on again sometime soon.
My pleasure. Can't wait. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thanks.